Someone's voice woke up Blair. He slowly opened his eyes and everyone around him immediately burst into laughter. One of the students asked how such a stupid idiot was still studying here. Blair got scolded again. Blair scratched his head and thought, "Where am I? Is this a dream?" The girl sitting next to him whispered that teacher Brittany was calling him again. Blair turned around and saw his teacher behind him. She leaned over and asked displeased, "Did you sleep so soundly that you already forgot where you were?" Blair looked at her and thought, "Is this the teacher?" His teacher pulled his ear and said she knew that she couldn't sleep in her lessons. He must know how necessary mathematics is. She picked him up and told him to go answer. Blair walked up to the board and thought that he seemed to be faced with a very difficult problem. The problem on the board consisted only of single numbers that needed to be added. The teacher noticed that Blair was standing still and told him to solve this task at home. Tomorrow before class he would show it to her. This will be his punishment for sleeping in class. The children laughed and said that this idiot would not be able to solve this problem in 3 days. Mathematics is one of the most important sciences. Such an idiot cannot have the ability to do it. Blair smiled and started writing something and his teacher thought, "Is he so confident like a scientist rich in knowledge?" Blair wrote back and the teacher thought it was impossible. Blair turned to the teacher and asked if he could go to the toilet. She allowed it and the children asked in surprise, was he able to solve the problem? He clearly wrote a random number. The teacher disagreed with the students and said that the answer was absolutely correct. Blair left the class and surprised exclamations began to sound behind him. Someone exclaimed, "How can this be? Even the teacher took several hours to solve this problem." Blair thought that this wasn't even an arithmetic progression problem. He moved. Chen Luo is an ordinary mathematics teacher who has completely devoted himself to this science. After graduating from university, he worked tirelessly as a teacher for many years. Next year he plans to receive a higher academic title, and at such a key moment he moved. He only took a nap during the exam, so why did he move to another world? It's not scientific. They don't live in a comic book. Maybe Newton can help him. He moved into the body of a student named Blair, but he is a complete zero in mathematics. The whole class calls him a fool based on the situation that just happened. In this world, mathematics is highly respected as a science, but their level of knowledge is quite low. Even a student from elementary school can easily find the answer to such a problem, but in this world, everyone can only add numbers one at a time. Since he can't solve the displacement problem, then he will become the best mathematician in this world. Chen Luo will rise to the height of science even in another world. Suddenly, a girl came out from around the corner and they ran into each other. They both fell to the floor, and Blair apologized to her, but suddenly he saw that he was hovering over her, and she looked at him indignantly. Blair quickly pulled back, gave her a helping hand, then looked away and said that he didn't mean for this to happen. The girl suddenly jumped to her feet and said that it was him again. Blair pointed a finger at himself in surprise and asked, "Do you know me?" She shouted that of course she knew him. It was he who pushed her at the entrance ceremony. Because of him she ended up in this position. He embarrassed her in front of the school. She remembered his face forever, but this time he specifically ambushed her. Blair looked away and thought, does he seem to be in trouble? What's happening? But wasn't she the one who crashed into him? He replied that he was not guarding her at all. Besides, wasn't she the one who bumped into him? She told him to stop. Then she started making some movements with her fingers and spoke to the element of fire, telling him to listen to her order. Nothing happened. Then Blair exhaled and said that she was so naive. He started waving his hands and asked, does she think she has magic? Let her look at him, ancient god of darkness. He started fooling around, and then the girl's spell worked and fire appeared in her hand. Blair stopped, and then the girl attacked him, telling him to get it. Blair thought, how could he forget? Isn't magic a prerequisite for moving to another world? He just moved to another world, and they are already throwing fireballs at him. What should he do? He asked her to wait, and the girl said that he was shameless. Let him receive punishment. Blair thought this meant he had to adapt quickly. He bowed sharply to her, and said that he was very rude. He asked her to accept his deepest apologies. He thought that a real man can always adapt. The girl stopped abruptly and chuckled questioningly. Then the fire in her hand disappeared, and she said that he should not think that he could apologize, and that's all. Suddenly she saw that there was no trace of him, and said that he ran away so quickly. Meanwhile, Blair was running around the school grounds thinking, what is wrong with this world? Do science and magic exist together? Suddenly he felt something and thought, what is it? His head was pounding in pain. He sat down on the ground, and then memories appeared in his head. Blair wept bitterly and called for help. His father and the people who came to their house reported that the general had given his life for his homeland. The man handed Blair's mother a box and told her to calm her sadness after the death of his father. Blair and his mother moved into a modest house. The people who lived there turned to them and gossiped. One woman told her friend that they said she was from an aristocratic family. Her friend asked, "What kind of aristocracy is here?" After the death of their husband, they became so poor that they had to work. Years passed. One joyful day, Blair came up to his mother and said that he had been accepted into the Shona Academy. She said that he must study well at the academy. Blair responded by telling her not to worry. He was already an adult. His mother imagined how he would grow up and thought that he was already so old. Some days, Blair spent time in the library. The old man who worked there told him not to dig around for too long, otherwise he wouldn't let him sleep there. Blair began reading books with the thought that he would definitely return their family to its former honor. At the academy, he tried to cast a spell, but nothing worked for him. His classmates began to say that he was trying so hard but could not make a single fireball. He had no talent for magic at all. He couldn't even master the fireball technique. He may be from a noble family, but he was so poor that his family wouldn't even hire him as a servant. Such a mediocre student would soon be expelled from the academy. He's also a complete idiot in mathematics. He probably didn't have a teacher in his childhood. If it weren't for the glory left by his dead father, both of them wouldn't even take him here. Let them just look at his black hair and brown eyes. He is definitely not pure blood. All the memories came flooding back to Blair at once, and at the end he heard his own words. He apologized to his parents and said that he knew nothing about mathematics or magic. He was worthless. He returned from his memories and his classmate asked what was wrong with him. Blair opened his eyes and thought, "I call her Jasmine. She is from my class. How did she find me?" Jasmine smiled and said that there was a lesson on magic theory downstairs. He was okay. She held out her hand, and Blair replied that he was fine. He thought that he didn't think anyone would worry about him. He accepted her help and thanked her. He thought that now he understood what happened to Blair, but now he had him. After that, they went to class. The teacher said that as everyone knows, there are 4 magical elements in the world, and all magic is based on them. Blair thought that in this world, people are divided into natural-born magicians and ordinary people. Both magic and science are very important. This academy is a famous magic academy. The teacher raised her hand up and said that in this world, magic is based on 4 elements: earth, fire, wind and water. They are the 4 main elements. Mages use spells and hand gestures as well as spiritual power to manipulate the elements. This is how magic happens, but to use magic you need natural ability. After a while, the bell rang, and the students were glad that classes were finally over. Another student said that all these old people can do is lecture from textbooks. It's so boring. The teacher had already begun to collect his textbooks, but Blair approached him. The teacher asked if he had a question again. Blair said he wanted to ask, without natural abilities, is it really impossible to wield even a drop of magic? The teacher apologized and said that he had already asked this many times. The answer would not change. Without abilities, he cannot control magical elements. After that, other students began to laugh at him and said that their mediocre Blair was fantasizing again. He tries so hard in all his classes, but what's the point? If he doesn't have talent, it won't appear. Suddenly one boy put his hand on Blair's shoulder and said that it would be okay if he didn't graduate. By that time he would already be working on his father's estate. He pointed his finger at his classmate and said that he, Toby, would always share bread with him. Blair turned around and thought that he remembered this man. He is Blair's only friend, and he seems to treat him well. Toby smiled, then said goodbye to Blair. Jasmine remained in the classroom. Blair noticed her and asked if she wanted to say something. Jasmine replied that this is not true. Blair thought that she seemed very worried about him. Jasmine quickly ran to the exit of the class and said that teacher Brittany told him to come to her office after class. He replied that he understood, he would go. He remained sitting in class and thought that she was so strange. He saw her several times today, but it was as if she always wanted to tell him something. Even though he has excellent knowledge in mathematics, without the ability for magic in the magical world, it is simply ridiculous for an ordinary person from birth. Maybe they should just try it. He began to cast a spell to summon fireballs, but nothing worked for him. He thought, what was I waiting for? He was already upset, but suddenly, flames began to appear around him. Then the fire became brighter and enveloped his hand. Blair looked in surprise at the flash of fire in his hand, and thought, is it a fireball? But this cannot be, because this body should not have any ability for magic.
He exhaled, and said,
This is so cool, fireball magic. He started playing with the fireball, and told it to go out and play. He raised a huge fireball above his head, and thought, it's a real fireball. Could it be that when he crossed space, magical channels opened in him? Suddenly he remembered that he needed to see the teacher and quickly went to her. He knocked on the door, and the teacher told him to come in. Blair opened the door, and asked for her forgiveness, but suddenly stopped short when he saw that his teacher was writing something on the table while standing. Blair called out to her. She smiled, and said that he had finally come.
Oops.
He looked at her figure, and she, sitting on a chair, told him not to pay attention. She always does calculations, while standing. He replied, that it was okay, but he was late. Why did she call him? Brittany waved her hand towards the chair, and told him to sit down. She handed him a pen and paper, and asked him to solve this problem. Blair saw the problem again, in which all the numbers were added one at a time, and the teacher, heading to the exit from the office, said that she would leave for a while and let him decide. She told him to take his time. Blair named the answer, and the teacher was very surprised. She turned around and asked what he had said. Blair replied that the answer to this problem was 3,160. Brittany quickly came up and touched Blair on the shoulder, asking how he did it. Even she took a very long time to solve this example. Had he really already solved it? But this couldn't be, because she had chosen the number 79 by chance. Blair asked, do you really want to know? Brittany smiled, and asked, will you tell your teacher? I'm so curious. Blair responded with a glance to the side, and replied that he would tell her. She was happy, and he thought, is the teacher such a fool by nature? After that, he scattered all the papers on her desk, and said that he saw her process of solving problems. She performs calculations by adding numbers one at a time. This is not only a waste of time, but also an opportunity to make a mistake. He looked at her calculations, and said that she had calculated everything correctly, which was commendable. Brittany said that this is the topic of the last lesson. In this world, the magic of mathematics is at a low level, but is this the only way to solve it? Brittany replied that she was wrong. He took the first one, and said that this problem also has a second solution method. First you need to find a pattern. He began to write down the solutions on paper, and said that the first number in the last, the second number in the penultimate, and so on. Add them up, and you get 80. Let her say how many numbers add up to get 80. Brittany suddenly raised her hand, and said that she understood. There are 39 of them. Blair said, that's right.
Yeah, great.
Let's sit down. He suddenly remembered that she was the teacher, and apologized to her, saying that it was a habit. Brittany thought, did he tell me to sit down? It's a habit. Brittany went on to explain further, saying that this changed the problem from difficult addition to easy multiplication. At the same time, they should not forget about the number without a pair. It is 40. Using this method, she would also be able to find a solution very quickly. Brittany greatly admired his solution, and said that it turns out there is such a wonderful way. Moreover, it seems to her that this method can be improved further. Blair said, that's right. You're great. If in a block of numbers, starting from the second,
Each one differs by the same number as the previous one,
then they can be described by one simple formula. He wrote on paper a formula for summing an arithmetic progression, and his teacher was lost in thought. Blair waved his hand in front of her eyes and called out. He thought, elementary school math from my world is so difficult for this world. Brittany asked if he came up with this method himself. Blair replied that it was something like that, it would be more convenient. He thought that she still wouldn't understand if he told her Gus's name. The teacher grabbed his hand and said he was a genius. If he continues to do this, he has a bright future ahead of him. She got too close to Blair, and he called out to her. After that, she quickly backed away from him, and said that she was just so excited.
She thought for a second,
and asked if he wanted to become an outstanding mathematician. Blair happily replied that he didn't want to. He wanted to become an outstanding magician. Brittany tilted her head to the side, and looked at him, puzzled. Then she quickly clung to him, and grabbed his hand, saying that he was so gifted in mathematics.
This was the blessing of Manura.
He should not waste his talent. Besides, she knew that he had no ability for magic. By becoming a mathematician, he could also take a worthy position in society. In any case, he should choose mathematics, not magic. Blair threw her hand away from him, and said that he still wanted to become a magician. He thought that as soon as he introduced a couple of theories to this world, he would immediately become a great mathematician, and this is a fairly easy path. But he would only pass off other people's discoveries as his own, and transfer the fruits of great scientists
into this world.
The magic in this world attracted him much more than the glory of a mathematician. Brittany asked, "Since you want to become a magician so much, can you make a bet?" Blair asked, "What bet?" She replied, that there would be the magic exam in a few days will finally decide whether he can stay at the academy. Blair got a little upset and said that if he didn't pass the exam, he would be expelled. Brittany said that if he really wants to become a magician, then he must pass this exam. Blair looked up at her in surprise, and she, showing him the calendar, said that they would make a bet. If he passes the exam, she will no longer persuade him. If he doesn't pass, she'll help him apply for a teaching assistantship so he can stay, but he must give up magic and help her study mathematics. How's that for him? She mentally apologized to him and thought that he would definitely lose this argument due to his inability to do magic. Blair agreed, and after that, he left the office and thought that she was so stubborn.
She pestered him so much.
He remembered how she told him not to forget about their bet, and thought that he would rather do magic.
Suddenly a girl jumped out from around the corner again, and they collided.
Blair fell to the floor, and thought that this was such a familiar situation. He grabbed the girl, and thought about what it felt like. He suddenly opened his eyes, and saw what he was grabbing.
And the girl grabbed him by the clothes and said that he was shameless.
She started using fireball magic again, but at that moment, Blair had already managed to hide, and she shouted, "Where is he again? This shameless bastard got away." Blair thought that if he hadn't run like that, he would have been turned to ashes by now. After a while, in Brittany's office, the same girl was sitting in her office, and the teacher, calling her Isella, asked what happened. She had been unhappy since she came in.
Isella replied that she met a pervert twice at the academy today.
Brittany asked if they have any perverts, but any pervert would be unlucky if he ran into her.
Isella replied that next time she would definitely shoot a fireball at him.
The teacher laughed and said that this was all Isella. Isella threw a stack of papers on the table, and said that they would not talk about it.
If she had already solved this problem.
She only spent half an evening working on it, and she got it done quickly. She probably solves such problems even faster now. Brittany looked at her solution to the problem, and said that she was great. She really solves faster than her, but Blair was able to complete the problem in just a minute.
Isella was surprised, and asked how he could decide so quickly.
This is impossible. Who is Blair anyway? She had never heard of such a thing. Brittany smiled, and said that he really only needed a minute. She had never seen such a solution. Now she will show. She showed her a piece of paper with Blair's solution, and said that first she needed to figure out the pattern. The sum of these numbers, then they multiply the sum of the numbers by the logarithm. Here he simplified everything into a formula.
Isella looked at his decision, and then grabbed her head, and exclaimed,
"That means this is also possible, and this is the way this Blair came up with." The teacher confirmed her words, and said that she herself was very surprised that there was such a talented mathematician in their academy. Isella said she wanted to meet this Blair. The teacher saw her burning eyes, and agreed. After that, Isella opened the door to Blair's class with her feet and shouted, "Is there Blair in their group? She wants to meet him." Toby wanted to answer her something, but Blair pinched his leg, and hiding under the table, showed him a sign to be quiet. Toby awkwardly scratched the back of his head, and replied that Blair had just left on business. Isella asked, "Did he leave again?" She headed towards the exit of the class, and said that they should then tell him when she returns that she wants to talk to him. She has business with him. Toby agreed, and after that, the door to the classroom closed, and Blair crawled out from under the table. There was silence in the class, and everyone started throwing strange looks at Blair. Blair looked around and asked his friend why they were looking at him like that. Toby grabbed him by the shoulder, and told him to tell the truth about what happened to Isella. Blair asked, "Isella is this girl's name?" Toby asked if he was really interested in anything other than books and part-time work. Does he even know who this Isella is? Blair got scared, and even knew who this Isella is. Toby asked if he even knew how many fans Isella had. If they find out that he offended their goddess, they will not forgive him. Blair replied that this is the Shinden Academy. They cannot do whatever they want. Toby said that at least he knows what their academy is called. Then let him tell him where their campus is. Blair asked, "On Baker Avenue." Toby asked, "Where is this avenue?" Blair replied that he was in the city of Yabo. Toby sighed and said that he already thought that he was pretending to be a fool, but now he sees that he really is a fool. Isella's father is the mayor of Yabo. Blair was surprised and thought, what the hell, this is what he got himself into. He asked, if he finds her and apologizes, will she forgive him? One of his classmates heard this and asked,
Led he dare to get into conflict with Isella.
He looks like he doesn't want to stay at the academy. Blair turned around in fear, and the boy said that this was correct. Anyway, such mediocrity should not have lasted here for a couple of days. Blair thought that this guy's name was Bud. This idiot was always hurting Blair. Toby asked if he would art. Blair thought that what he said was true. Although in addition to magic, the academy studies mathematics, history,
philosophy, and more.
If he cannot become a magician, he can become a scientist and have the same respected position in society. However, in a royal-level academy, unlike the Shand NASA Academy, graduates must have at least some magical abilities. After all second-year students will have to pass. In fact, the magic exam is quite simple. Every student can pass it easily. But Blair is absolutely not endowed with the ability to use magic, so for him, this exam will mean the end of his studies at the academy. It's not surprising that the teacher decided to argue about passing the exam. Bud hit the table with his fist and exclaimed, is he even listening to him? He pointed his finger at Blair and said that he was an orphan mudblood. Toby rose from his seat and called out to Bud with displeasure. Then he asked if he wanted to fight. Bud asked why he cares. Toby replied that Blair is his friend, and his business is his business. If he wants to fight, he will show what he is capable of. Bud replied that he would remember that. Next time, they will answer him. Bud and his friends left, and Blair thought that although this fat man does not seem very reliable, at such a moment, he showed himself to be a loyal friend. He's a great friend.
He asked if Isella bothered him.
He would help him, right? Toby smiled and replied that of course, he would do it, but by then, he would give it to him. The smile on Blair's face disappeared. After that, time passed, and a few days later, the magic exam came. All the students gathered on the site, and the teacher said that in this exam, they will test their fireball technique. Students who fail the exam cannot continue their studies at the academy. Fireball is basic magic. He thinks every student can handle this task. They will need to stand behind a line and hit the target with a fireball. They'll start with Bud. Bud stepped forward and cast a fireball. The man extended his hand forward and sent the fireball at the target. The teacher praised him and said that he passed the exam. Linda has passed. Linda has passed. Let the next student come up. Bud looked at Blair and said that he should enjoy his last minutes at the academy. Toby got angry and told him to shut his mouth. The teacher said Toby is next. Toby stepped forward and extending his hand, began to cast a spell. A small ball of fire accumulated in his hands, and he aimed it at the target, but the fireball did not reach the target. And the teacher said that he passed. Toby was delighted, and the other students said that he had conjured such a small ball. He had tried hard. The teacher looked at the list and saw that Blair was next. Blair thought that he did not have the gift of magic. He would not pass the exam. He could not even create a fireball. Poor guy, he doesn't want to expose him to ridicule. He sighed, and said that the entire second year passed the exam. Then he declared their test over. Bud told him to wait. The teacher looked up at him, and Bud told Teacher Anthony that he had missed one student. He pointed his finger at Blair and said that he hadn't passed the exam yet. Blair remained silent, and the teacher asked if this is how he will pass. Bud asked if he is a student at the Magic Academy and will not take the magic exam. All Bud's friends laughed and said that this idiot would be expelled. Bud said that he can still return to the academy. Maybe he shouldn't lose face. A crowd gathered around Blair, and other students headed to the spectacle. Two girls ran past Teacher Brittany and said that the idiot from the 5th group was about to disgrace himself. Toby put his hand on Blair's shoulder and told him to ignore it. They were just out to make fun of him. Blair pursed his lips and said he'll try. Teacher Brittany came to a crowd of students, and one of them asked what he thought he was. He doesn't have the ability for magic at all, so why disgrace himself? Another student replied that he probably still had not come to terms with the fact that he was untalented. The teacher told them all to calm down. After that, he looked at Blair and said that he would ask again.
Does he really want to pass the exam? Blair confirmed his words, and said that he wanted to try it. The teacher nodded and said that whatever the result, he did well. Now he can begin. Blair stood in front of the target, thinking that although the spell and hand gestures were not needed, he would still do it for appearance sake. He began to cast a spell and gesture with his hands, and after that, the hot air scalded the students behind him, but the fireball did not appear. Bud took a closer look, and then laughed, and said that it was very strong. Blair finished the spell, and then a powerful fireball appeared in front of him. He shot it at the target. There was an explosion, and all the students were very surprised, including the teachers. The students continued to stand there, their mouths open in surprise. When the smoke cleared, they saw that the target was completely broken. After this, the examiner said that Blair passed the examiner, said that Blair passed the exam. Bud looked at the broken target, and said it was impossible. Toby was delighted, and patted Blair on the head, and asked if he had been hiding his talent all this time. After this, Teacher Anthony asked Blair to come to him. And Teacher Brittany thought how could he do this? Anthony's teacher took Blair to school, and asked if he had practiced every day from books, and in the end he was able to create a fireball. Blair confirmed his words, and Anthony said that magic is a gift from the gods to people. Even ancient magicians used gestures and spells to release their abilities, and those who were deprived of abilities were called abandoned gods. There are many such people, and he is one of them. But now, the gods have rewarded him with their gift. This happens very rarely. In addition, today in the exam, he showed excellent speed and put his hand on Blair's shoulder, and said that Blair had great potential as a wizard.
Blair thought that last time he was persuaded to take up mathematics, and now, magic. Blair thanked Anthony's teacher for his praise, and said that when he first came into this world, he became very interested in magic, but now he wanted to go back to his world. Anthony asked, "To his world? What are you talking about?" Blair suddenly realized what he had said and apologized, saying that he had just been reading books on magic and was talking nonsense. He thought to himself that he was such a fool for spilling the beans. Anthony said that Blair seemed to be putting in a lot of effort lately, and that other world he was talking about was apparently from the legends of the Holy Master. Blair thought, "Holy Master, this is probably the highest rank of magicians." Anthony's teacher said that according to legend, there was once a holy master who could control space, tear it apart, and go to another world. But these are just legends. They all know perfectly well that the gods created only their world, no other exists. Blair asked, "Space management, space gap, a trip to another world?" Blair grabbed the teacher by the shoulders and called out to him in surprise. Blair exclaimed that he should become a holy master. After the magic exam, the academy announced several days off, during which time Blair looked through almost all the books on magic in the library. Mages in this world are divided into 7 levels: low, medium, high, great magician, master, grand master, and sacred master. Sacred master is the highest level, spoken of in legends. Their magical abilities are described in ancient books, but currently there are no people left who have seen them. Many books indicate that the sacred masters possess the magic of space. They could tear space and move between worlds. Although many people think that there is no other world, and the magic of space is just a legend, since Blair was able to move, he thinks that the magic of space still exists. This is his only hope of returning to the real world. However, Teacher Anthony does not believe in the magic of space, so Blair will not receive any new information from him. The old librarian tapped his finger on the table and asked, "Does he read everything?" Blair thought it was the administrator who had come. The old man said that it was time for him to work. Idlers had nothing to do in their library. Blair awkwardly scratched the back of his head and said that he was on his way. Time passed, and morning came. Blair walked out of the library and thought he had licked everything clean. He didn't think it was so hard to work in the library. His lower back hurt, and his arms and legs were shaking. He opened the door and went into his class. After that, the students began to whisper. One of them said that Blair had the largest fireball in the test, even larger than Anthony's teacher had. Had he really been hiding his abilities all this time? Another girl said that she hadn't noticed before, but Blair was quite handsome. No wonder Isella came. Suddenly Blair noticed Isabella and thought, "What is she doing here?" Isabella sat in his place with her feet on the table. He immediately turned away, and mentally told her not to look at him. Isabella jumped up and said that she didn't know he was the same Blair. Blair turned to her and told her to listen to him. It was just a misunderstanding. Isabella called him a pervert and told him to shut up. After that her hand caught fire, and Blair asked if she was not going to do it right here. Isabella cast a spell, and Blair covered his hands, cursing. Then he opened his eyes and saw that Brittany's teacher had grabbed Isabella's hand and prevented her from doing this. She asked why she was using magic in the audience. Isabella told her to listen. It was all him. Brittany raised her hand and told her to be quiet. She called out to Blair and said that she was just looking for him and wanted him to follow her into the office. Then she called out to Isabella and said that she would go too. Blair shrugged and thought, what should he do? He has no choice. After that they both left the classroom, and silence reigned between the students. Bud thought that Blair was just an idiot. What happened to him? Meanwhile, in Brittany's office, Blair said that he accidentally bumped into Isabella and really wanted to apologize.
He asked for her forgiveness.
Brittany said that everything was cleared up and that she could trust him. He did it by accident. She called out to Isabella and said that she should not argue. Isabella replied that if Brittany said so, then she would forgive him. Brittany told Blair that she had seen him in the exam, and he had exceeded all her expectations. She won the argument and would no longer insist, but could he tell her how he did it? It was the first time she had seen someone who did not have the gift of magic suddenly acquired it. Blair replied that he was just lucky. By the way, he had a question for her about magic. Brittany smiled and said that if he didn't want to talk, she wouldn't force him, but let him ask. She would help in any way she could. Blair asked, are spells and hand gestures required to release an element? Isabella laughed and asked, what kind of stupid question is this? Even children know this. Of course, to call an element, you need a spell and gestures. Blair asked, is it like this for all magicians? Are there really no exceptions? The teacher replied, even strong magicians need spells and gestures, but the more they understand the element, the less time it takes them. Magic is a gift from the gods. The gods taught people to use gestures to summon an element, and thus magic was passed down from generation to generation. To summon an element without all this, one must have divine enlightenment. Isabella asked, why did you answer his stupid question so seriously? Blair looked at his hands, and wondered if because he was from another world, the gods of this world ignored him. Brittany said, this is basic knowledge about magic. If you want to become a magician, then you should first study the theory well. She then said that she had called him today on important business. She handed him a piece of paper, and he asked what it was. Blair unfolded the paper, and Isabella said, you didn't know that either. This is a scientific newsletter. All the most important scientific works are published here. But suddenly she was very surprised and asked, is the name of the teacher Brittany? Brittany said, I figured out the summoning method that Blair showed me, and I even wrote a paper on it. Since Blair put forward this method, his name should also be published. Blair thought that he did not need his name in the newspaper. It would be better if they paid him money. He worked in the library every day for pennies and didn't even always have enough for food. The teacher got up from the table and said that she almost forgot. She handed him a bag and said that this was a reward for publication. There were 50 pieces of silver. Let this be nothing compared to scientific fame, but let this money go to you, she said. Blair was delighted with the reward and thought that he had been dying of fatigue in the library for 2 pieces of silver a month, but here it was as much as 50. However, he stretched out his hand and asked if he could take it. This is half your merit, he said. Brittany agreed and said that was true. Then she would take half for herself. She poured out half the coins for herself and said, these are your 25 pieces of silver. She thought that he was so kind, so she would not offend him. Blair got upset and thought, what the hell? He had just said that out of politeness, but she accepted it as the truth. She still sparkled all over with one phrase. He lost 25 pieces of silver. It was time for him to learn to watch his language. Suddenly an idea came to his mind, and he asked the teacher, for every article published in the newspaper, do you get 50 pieces of silver? She thought about it and replied that she hadn't even thought about it. But it must be true that each article published in a scientific journal costs 50 pieces of silver. Blair said he had some ideas. Recently I thought that the number of a set begins with the second term, and the ratio of each previous term is equal to a constant value. Maybe there is a formula for summing them up. Brittany asked, is he talking about the Routh riddle? Blair asked again, what's Routh's riddle? She replied, The Ralph riddle was a mathematical problem put forward by the ancient sages. Ralph has 7 children, each child has 7 bags, each bag has 7 cats, and each cat has 7 kittens. Blair agreed and said, there aren't many numbers in this problem. If you add them up, you can get the answer, but if there were more numbers, then in this case, another solution method would be very helpful. Brittany asked, are you saying you can solve Ralph's riddle using a different method? Blair replied that he had some ideas. The teacher was delighted and said that they needed to work on his method. Several hours passed. Isabella dozed off and woke up to the enthusiastic voice of the teacher, who shouted, this is incredible. He solved the riddle of Ralph with one formula. His math skills are second to none. Are you sure he doesn't want to do research with me? Isabella put her hand on Blair's shoulder and said, I didn't know you were so good at math. Did you really come up with this on your own? Blair asked if she really wanted to know. Isabella confirmed his words and told him not to lie to her. Blair pointed his finger at her and said that he didn't have any special talents. He just studied math when other people were asleep. Isabella asked in surprise, is this true? Thus Chanlua's geometric progression summation formula amazed the people, and his little plan went like clockwork. Sometime later, Isabella walked along the corridor and thought that it seemed like what this pervert told her really made sense, but she didn't know why she had some strange feeling. Suddenly she noticed him and quickly hid around the corner thinking, isn't he in his second year? Why did he come to the third-year building? Did he really decide to help other students? She looked around the corner and thought that this time she would catch him red-handed. Suddenly she saw that he was missing and thought, where is he? Blair walked on the street and remembered Toby's words that there was a low stone fence behind the third-year building. There was no one there, so he could safely climb over. But he thought, he won't do anything bad, will he? If anything happens, don't let him say that he told him. Blair looked at the stone fence in front of him and thought that Toby must have been talking about this place. He climbed over the fence and thought about Anthony's teacher, who had recently said that if he wanted to learn more about magic, he should go to the Magic Association in Yabo City, where he could find more experienced teachers. Blair looked into the distance and seeing the city streets in front of him, thought it was interesting. Life was in full swing on the city street. Sellers were selling goods, and people were discussing things. Blair walked down the street and saw the Magic Association. He thought, it's so luxurious. Is this the Magic Association? He took out a mask from his pocket and put it on his face, thinking that he needed to be careful. He had better not reveal his identity. He walked into the Magic Association, where Jasmine greeted him at the reception desk. He explained everything to her, and she asked, so you want to find a magic consultant, right? Blair confirmed her words and thought, is this not Jasmine from my group? What is she doing here? Does she work here part-time? Jasmine did not recognize him, and said that the fee for consulting a high-level mentor would be 10 gold a month. An average-level mentor would cost 5 gold, and a low-level mentor would cost 2 gold. She asked him what he wanted. Blair stopped listening to her, and thought, why does he have to suffer so much? 1 gold piece costs 100 silver pieces, and he now has only 30. Blair headed toward the exit and apologized for disturbing her, but Jasmine stopped him and said that if he had problems with money, he could subscribe to their library. Blair asked about the library, and Jasmine confirmed his words, saying that the library of the Magic Association contains several tens of thousands of publications on magic. He could learn almost all the knowledge about magic from their books. It may not be comparable to consultations with a mentor, but it was absolutely free. Blair was delighted, and thought, can I have a subscription? Jasmine agreed and said that he needed to provide his ID. Blair did not answer, and she said that since he wanted a consultation, she thought he was already a magician. To make a subscription, he needed at least proof that he was studying magic. Blair was completely upset and thought it would be better for Acela to kill him. Then Jasmine said with a smile that it was quite easy to prove. For example, if he wanted to prove his abilities in fire elemental magic, then he needed to create a fireball in front of an expert. He asked, can this be done here? Jasmine confirmed his words, and then looked away, saying that she did not advise him to do this today. The expert was quite strict, and they said that his pass rate was only 10%. Already 300 magicians had failed his exam. Blair replied, it's okay. I want to do it today. He thought it would be difficult to climb over the fence again.
Jasmine took Blair into the office and told Mr. Andre that Mr. wanted to confirm his abilities. Blair looked at Andre and thought that he was wearing a red mage robe with 2 silver stripes. He was a mid-level magician of the fire element. Andre took a sip of tea from a mug and asked what his name was and why he was wearing a mask. Blair replied that his name was Chan Luo and he put on the mask because he received a burn while training in the fireball technique. The old man sitting next to Andre said, he burned his own face. Apparently, his fireballs are not easy. Andre said, your name is strange. Since you came to the exam at this age, you will probably become a low-level magician. Jasmine smiled and invited Mr. Andre to go to the exam room, but he did not agree. Jasmine left, but he said that they would not conduct the exam here and that he needed a deposit. He wanted to see Blair's fireball technique, and Blair was told to try to attack him. Blair asked, isn't there enough space here? The old man asked, do you really think you can hurt Andre with your little fireball? Since you say to attack, then let's see. Don't waste our time, Blair replied. If that's the case, then let them judge for themselves. He began to cast a spell and make gestures, and Andre watched him, commenting that his gestures were sharp but that he was casting the spell slowly. Blair extended his hand forward, and flames began to accumulate around him. Everyone was surprised, and Andre was scared. He told Blair to wait. Blair suddenly opened his eyes and finished casting the spell, forming a huge fireball. The fireball flew toward Andre, and there was a strong explosion. After a few seconds, the smoke began to clear, and Jasmine started to cough. The old man, who was at the center of the explosion, also coughed, because he protected Mr. Andre with his shield. Andre looked at the shield in front of him in fear, and the old man removed it. Then he touched Andre's shoulder, and Jasmine was horrified. Blair apologized, and said that he thought they were ready, so he hit with all his might. After this, Jasmine gave Blair a magician's ID, and a library card. Blair looked at the library card, and Jasmine said that he showed great fireball skill. She had never seen a fireball so powerful. Someday he would definitely become a great magician. Blair headed to the library, calling her by name. Blair thanked her, and said that they would see each other later. Said goodbye to him, and thought, how did he know my name? In the library, Blair saw other magicians, and thought that he didn't even imagine there would be so many people here. He sat down at a table, and began to read books, thinking that this was strange. Jasmine had correctly said that there were many more books here than in the academy, and the content was much more in-depth, especially about magical spiritual power. The level of magical spiritual power is the main criterion for determining the level of a magician. The higher the spiritual power, the more closely it is connected to the magical element, and the stronger the magic will be. Moreover, high-level mages with high spiritual power can even control the magic elements of lower-level mages. This leads to the fact that during a battle between mages, there is almost no way to overcome the difference in levels. However, the books about the 4 magical elements are written rather chaotically. After all, the level of education in this world is quite low. Mages in this world believe that the 4 elements are not only the basis of magic, but also the basis of the entire world. The remaining elements are combined into these 4 main elements in certain proportions. Of course, if he looks at all this from the point of view of modern science, their worldview is very primitive. Judging by the laws of physics, all matter consists of atoms. Atoms form molecules through covalent bonds, and through ionic bonds. They combine into ions, and form different chemical elements with different structures. Even high school students know that matter is made up of different elements, and the so-called 4 elements in the table of elements do not exist. But since there are magical elements in this world, he cannot find a scientific explanation for it. What if in this world, he can interact with magical elements? Suddenly he jumped up from his seat, startling the other library patrons. He thought that if he could interact with magical elements, he could create new magic. He took a library card, and ran out of the library, thinking that he would try this. Meanwhile, Andre and the old man were watching him. Jasmine brought 2 cups, and said that this was their coffee. Andre looked at Blair, and said that this Chan Luo had very low spiritual power, but he was able to create an unimaginably strong fireball. The old man said that what was even more strange was that Blair could not control the summoned element. Maybe he had something they couldn't understand. After a while, Blair returned to the academy, and climbed over the fence. He found himself in a clearing, and thought that there was no one here, so he would try it right here. He began to concentrate, and inhale thick smoke. He suddenly opened his eyes, and thought that he could feel and control the flow. Smoke began to emanate from his hand. He thought that he would try to direct the flow of smoke into the second element. A clot formed from his hand, and he thought it was oxygen. But is it really the element of pure oxygen? He couldn't determine it by eye. It continued to form in his hand, and he thought, this is it. He used the fire element and thought, what if it's really oxygen? But suddenly, the fire went out, and he said, apparently not. This is not what I imagined. What is this anyway? Some thin stream of smoke. But he didn't believe that he couldn't do it. He tried again, and magical energy began to gather around him. From this cycle, the glass and all the other fragile things in the academy began to crack. Brittany, who was working at the time, felt energy fluctuations and looked at the cracked window, seeing an explosion behind it. Meanwhile, smoke began to rise in the forest, and Blair began to cough. Within seconds, the smoke began to clear, and Blair thought it was good that he had reacted quickly. But suddenly, he got a little scared when he saw a large depression in the ground. He thought that it was due to an explosion. Everything here was completely burnt. When flammable substances combine with air, they produce carbon dioxide, water, and sulfur dioxide, and the combustion releases the entire heating value of the fuel. It seems that this oxygen is even purer than he expected. Suddenly, Blair heard the voice of a student shouting, "What happened there?" Blair started to run away and thought that he didn't think there would be so much noise here. He needed to get out of here. The student called out to him, but Blair ran on and thought that he had made a little noise, but it seemed that he had created something worthwhile. The next day, he sat in class and dozed off, thinking that he would never study all night again. But suddenly, Toby put his hand on his back and asked if he knew what had happened at the academy last night. Blair replied that he had slept like a log last night. What happened? Toby said that last night, there was an explosion near the third-year building. All the windows were broken. The academy is investigating. He thinks it was some high-level magician. He didn't see what was there. But now a magician of no less than a high level definitely possesses such power. But why would a high-level magician do something like this at the academy? Blair replied that he didn't know. He had never even seen such magicians. Toby asked, how could you not see high-level magician? Isn't Brittany's teacher a high-level magician? Blair was very surprised. After that, he knocked on the door of Brittany's office, and she opened it for him. She said he was just in time. She needed him. She showed him the newspaper, and said that the Association of Mathematicians had already published an article about the ruse riddle. Since he proposed this solution method, his name was listed first among the authors. She congratulated him, saying that he had solved the most difficult problem in the world of mathematics. Blair said that he came to her on important business. She asked, is it important? Blair replied that she should let him do math with her. Bernie was surprised and asked if he hadn't said that he wanted to become a magician. Blair answered that he did want to become a magician, but he also liked mathematics. He didn't want to regret it later. It even seemed to him that in a past life, he was an outstanding mathematician, as great as she was. She grabbed his hand and said that she was very glad to hear that. She hugged him to her chest and said that from now on, every day after school, they would do math. A volcanic eruption occurred in Blair's head, and he quickly pulled away from the enthusiastic teacher. She said that with his abilities, he just needed to strengthen them, and he would definitely become a great scientist. Blair asked if she would help him with questions about magic. Brittany agreed, and Blair thanked her, saying that he was off. He then left her office, and Brittany told him not to forget to come tomorrow. Blair said goodbye to her, but Brittany told him to wait. She didn't say anything, and Blair called out to her questioningly. Brittany thought about it, and after a short pause, said that she had thought about something. She decided that he wanted to study mathematics with her, not because of her help with magic. Blair realized that she understood everything, and she looked at him, waiting for an answer. At that moment, different thoughts began to flash through Blair's head. What should he do now? He would have to leave this world forever. She would rip his head off. He wanted to live a little longer. He opened his mouth, and after a second, asked, what are you saying? He just thought that, since they would spend so much time together, it would be more convenient for him to ask her about magic. She walked up to him, put her hand on his shoulder, and said that she was telling him he had a talent for mathematics, and he could use it as a tool. She led him to the exit of the office, and told him to go and rest, reminding him to come back after class. Blair left the office, and thought that this woman was both smart and stupid at the same time. The next evening, he came to Brittany's office, and said that he had arrived. However, he stopped in the passage when he saw Acela inside. She looked at him with irritation, and asked why he came. Brittany apologized to her, and said that she had forgotten to mention that from today, Blair would also be doing math with them, so she should take care of him. Acela turned away sharply, and Brittany told Blair to sit down next to Acela. She had prepared a task for him. They threw one stone into the well, and after a while, they threw another stone, but twice as heavy as the previous one. The question was, when would the second stone catch up with the first? Acela said that to solve this problem, they would need to know the interval. Blair interrupted her, and replied that the first stone would never catch up with the second. Strictly speaking, if they didn't pay attention to air resistance, the large stone would never catch up with the small one. Acela was displeased, and said that he didn't even know such basic thing. Brittany said that while she didn't know what he meant by air resistance, everyone knew that the speed at which a body falls is directly proportional to its mass. Acela said that the greater the mass, the faster the body falls. This was established by the ancient sages, and even children knew this. Blair listened to them and asked, if the sages said so, then, is it necessarily true? Have they ever seen it? Acela asked, did you dare to challenge ancient wisdom? Brittany noticed that an argument was brewing between them, and Blair said that science should be accurate, and so should the approach to it. If the truth cannot be proven, then it is not the truth. Acela asked, then, since you want proof, can we make a bet? Blair replied that betting was an unacceptable activity for a student, and he would never agree to it. Brittany told them to stop, but suddenly Acela interrupted her, and said that they were betting 10 gold. Blair jumped up from his chair and asked, why not? Brittany's teacher will be our witness. Brittany sighed tiredly, and after that, they came to the tower. Brittany held stones in her hands, and said that one stone was twice the size of the other. She turned to Blair and told him to think again. After all, 10 gold was a decent amount. Blair replied that he had already thought about it. Acela asked if he really thought he would win. Blair remained silent, and Brittany said that self-confidence was good, but he didn't need to be too smug. After that, she rose into the air with the help of the wind element. Blair was surprised and said, this is great. Acela said that it was a wind element flying technique. But of course, he didn't know anything about it. Brittany climbed to the top of the tower, preparing to throw the stone. Acela grinned, and told Blair that he would lose. Blair extended both her arms forward, and threw the stone. The distant her arms forward, and threw the stones. They flew down at the same time, and fell at the same time. Acela looked at the stones in surprise, and Blair grinned. Brittany went down to them and landed nearby. Seeing that the two stones were lying next to each other, she was very surprised and then exclaimed, how is this possible? Acela and Brittany thought they had fallen at the same time. Brittany looked at Blair and asked how he knew that the law of falling bodies was wrong. He replied that he had read this law in a textbook and checked it with 2 stones. That's how he realized that, in reality, the rules in the textbooks were different. Brittany thought that truths which had been passed down for over 1,000 years could be disproven by just throwing 2. Cela justificantabentum. Differprove. How many scientists didn't know that the simple truths they knew were not actually true? Why was Blair able to spot this so easily? She thought it wasn't all about luck. She said that he probably never realized how important those 2 stones were. She thought that, in the near future, a law under his name would appear in textbooks. Blair replied that there was still a lot of work to be done on the new law of falling. Besides, it wasn't only his merit. The 3 of them did it. Blair thought that, once again he got empty glory. He would play a little on emotions. Brittany replied that it was entirely his fault. She just threw 2 stones. However, if he wanted, they could finalize this law together with Acela. Acela asked, with her. Blair replied that he would of course need Acela's help. Would she help him? Acela was surprised, and imagined them working together. She remained silent, then thought, does he need her help? She turned away from him and said that, since he said so, she would help. Blair thanked her, and Acela thought about how it would sound. The law of falling bodies. She pursed her lips at such thoughts and told Blair that if anyone offends him at the academy, he should let her know. She would help him. She thought that Blair wasn't so bad. He was very smart, and also handsome. Blair thanked her, and then extended his hand to her. She thought, what is he doing? Does he want to shake her hand? What was he up to? Why was she so upset? She asked, what are you doing? Blair replied that he was waiting for the 10 gold. He looked at her with a smile, and thought that he was rich.
Ella understood what he was thinking and thought that his head was full of only this. After that, she gave him 10 gold pieces and told him not to count them. There were exactly 10 gold pieces. Blair was delighted and thought that in one bet he won 10 gold. He became rich in one day. Isabella called out to him and said that he seemed more interested in money than fame, but it seemed to her that he still did this not only for the sake of money. Blair thought about it and she asked, "What do you want?" Blair opened his mouth slightly but remained silent and decided not to answer. He remembered moments from his previous life and then closed his eyes a little. He asked, "What are you talking about?" "I just want to earn money and live better." He smiled and said that it was late. He would go and they would meet tomorrow. Isabella was a little upset and watched him go. The next day Blair lay on his desk and thought that it was much more comfortable to sleep on this desk than in that cubicle. Well, at least now he had money. He must move on. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted by a sharp crash from a hit on the table. He saw that Bud did it, and he said that Phage was looking for him, but he was still lying there. Blair asked, "Phage, who is this?" Bud pulled him towards him by his clothes with displeasure and asked if he had completely lost his fear. He thought that since he made a fireball now, he could do anything. Suddenly some guy came up to them and told Bud to let him go. Bud looked at the head man, Phage, and pursed his lips. Phage looked at Blair, and Blair looked at him and thought, "Is this Phage?" Phage approached him and asked if his name was Blair. He smiled and Blair said nothing. Then he looked at Bud and asked if he heard that he was told to let him go. Bud reluctantly let him go, and Blair asked the headman if something happened. Phage said that he should stay away from Mrs. Ella. People like him shouldn't communicate with her. He told his friends that they were leaving, and one of them asked if they would do anything to him. Phage collided with Toby, rubbed his shoulder displeasedly, and headed toward the exit from the audience. Toby approached Blair and asked if he was okay. What happened? Blair replied that it was nothing. Phage and Bud just wanted to talk to him. Toby asked, "What did Phage do to you?" Blair asked, "Who is this Phage? Is he afraid of him?" Toby replied, "This is the headman. Everyone at the academy is afraid of him. Only an eccentric like you, who always disappears behind books, cannot be afraid of him." Phage comes from the famous Howard family of the city of Yabo. He is the son of a viscount. Viscount Howard is an important person in the Society of Numbers. Many teachers at the academy are also members of this society. If you offended Phage, then I'm afraid you will have a hard time at the academy. He realized that Blair was fascinated by Isella's beauty, but he advised him not to neglect Phage's warning. Blair asked, "In what sense is he fascinated?" Time passed, and Blair came to the teacher's office and thought that, although the power of pure oxygen fireballs was enormous, he should first summon the ball and only then extract the oxygen element. Then the ball would not explode, and his main advantage would be that he would not need spells or hand gestures. But how is it possible to assign two different elements at the same time? Isabella called out to him and told him that he had better solve the problem that teacher Brittany had given them. Tomorrow she would explain everything. After her words, Blair yawned and handed her a piece of paper with his solution. She was surprised and asked if he had already finished. She had only gotten through half of it. Blair replied that everything cannot be solved in one old way. It is necessary to find original solutions. Isabella looked at his solution and asked, "So it was possible to do it this way?" He sat closer to her and asked if she could summon two fireballs at the same time. She replied that she could do a few. "What? A few?" Blair asked in surprise. "Several? How so?" Isabella smiled contentedly and asked, "What? The brilliant Blair can only summon one at a time?" Blair scratched his head and replied that he had received many books on magic, but he had never found a way to summon more than one element at a time. Isabella replied, "Of course, because the books only contain the basics. There are no such artificial techniques in them." Her father had invited her to a high-ranking magic consultant who taught her how to summon several elements at the same time. But if someone called her sister, she would help him learn it. Blair easily called her sister, and the smile on Isabella's face began to disappear. She was embarrassed and asked, "What kind of facial expression is that?" She stood up and said, "Let's go. Follow me. I'll teach you." After that, they entered the clearing and Isabella began to summon fireballs. She summoned several fireballs at once and Blair was very surprised, saying, "There are actually several of them, also so stable." Isabella said that the main key to summoning multiple fireballs is the distribution of spiritual power. Many people think that spiritual force can only be directed to one place, but once he masters this technique, he will be able to distribute the power to different places. Every part of this force is capable capable of summoning an element. This way, they can summon several balls. Blair asked, is it possible to summon different elements using different parts of the force? She replied, that's a great question. In theory, it is possible, but in practice, it is difficult to do. It's like drawing a square with one hand and a circle with the other. Meanwhile, Bud was watching them and thought, are they really in a relationship? After that, he told Phage everything, and Phage broke the wall with his fingers out of anger and said that Blair would definitely pay for this. Meanwhile, Blair tried to cast a spell and thought, do I need to divide the spiritual power into 9 particles? He concentrated, and Isabella told him to remember that everything must be done as she said. He must share the spiritual power step by step, but if he didn't succeed, then let him not be upset. She, for example, trained for 6 months before she was able to consistently divide the power. After these words, another fireball flashed in Blair's hand, and Isabella was very surprised to see many fireballs around him. She asked in surprise, how could you do this? Blair replied that he did everything as she told him. He divided the spiritual power into 9 parts and summoned a fireball. Isabella replied, I wasn't talking about that. I'm asking how could you do this right now? Blair replied that he understood the technique and was able to do it. Wasn't that the case with you? She remained silent and thought, this pervert is already a genius in mathematics, and now he's a genius in magic too. Who said he was abandoned by the gods? He's clearly their favorite. She stamped her foot in displeasure and replied, of course it happened to me too. I figured it out faster. She ran away and said that she would not teach him. Let him now deal with magic himself and not ask her. Blair remained silent and thought, did I offend her again? Women are so strange. He put his hand in his pocket and felt something there. Meanwhile, Isabella was walking across the clearing and thought that he had pissed her off so much. Suddenly, Blair grabbed her hand. She turned around and asked what he needed. She looked down at his palm, in which there was a bracelet with a cat. Blair told her with a smile that what he was able to learn was entirely thanks to her lesson, so he asked her to accept his gratitude. Isabella looked at the bracelet with the cat and blushed. Then she said that he still had a conscience. She thought, this idiot isn't so stupid after all. She snatched the bracelet from his hands and ran further, saying that the bracelet was ugly anyway. But suddenly she fell and Blair told her to be careful. She rose to her feet and then turned to look at Blair. He wondered why she was staring at him like that. What should I do? Should I come over and feel sorry for her? Won't she yell at me? She ran further and said that it was all because of him. I won't leave it like that. Blair smiled awkwardly and wondered what he did wrong. After that, he lay down on the grass and looking at the sky thought, if she didn't like it, she wouldn't have taken it. I spent 50 silver. He wanted to give the bracelet to teacher Brittany, but this was better. Suddenly, his view of the sky was blocked by Phage's friends, and Bud said that it seemed the elder Phage had warned him not to dare approach Ayala. Blair got to his feet and then ran away. Phage's friends told him to stop. Blair thought that he didn't see the point in messing with these guys. Bud called out to Blair and asked if he would really run away from a battle like his dad until they killed him. These words stopped Blair. Bud laughed and asked if he had pressed on the sore spot. He attacked Blair and said that he had asked for it. Bud wanted to hit him, but at the last moment, Blair pulled back and Bud received a burn. Blair turned around and started casting fireballs. Bud cried out in pain, and Blair said that although he was not his father was a brave warrior who died for his homeland. He was a wonderful father, so don't dare insult him. Did he understand? Phage's other friends counted the number of balls Blair had conjured and said that there were 9 of them. How is this possible? They asked, then ran away. Bud asked, where are the 2 of you going? Blair came closer to him and Bud got scared. He told him not to come any closer. It was forbidden to fight in the academy. Blair asked, so you know about this rule, and still attacked me. Bud leaned against the wall and said Blair didn't need to do this. Blair continued to approach and said, you should have thought of that sooner. He wanted to direct all the fireballs at Bud, but suddenly he noticed someone behind him. Bud began screaming for help. He opened his eyes, full of tears, and saw Blair had fallen at his feet. He looked at him in surprise, pointed his finger at him, and thought, what happened to this guy? Bud started to run away, thinking it didn't matter to him. He'd better run. Blair was approached by teachers, and Brittany told Bud to stop. Bud raised his hands and replied, I didn't do anything. Let them believe me. He fell himself. Brittany pulled Blair up and asked, If you didn't do anything, then how did this happen to him? Don't think I don't know how you feel about Blair, Bud replied. It used to be like that, but now I didn't do anything. I'll explain everything. Suddenly, the old man told him to stop. Blair lies at your feet. Don't play the fool. Even now, you continue to damage the Academy's image. Go to my office now, and wait for me there. I will deal with you. Bud agreed, and the old man turned to the vice chairman of the Archie Society. It was all the fault of the management of their academy, he said. I apologize for this spectacle. Archie called the old man Calvin's deputy and replied that fights between young people in educational institutions were common, but to be honest, they should be stricter with them. What is Blair's current state? Brittany noticed that Blair was weak and called out to him. Blair sighed and thought that he had gone to heaven. The heavens smiled on him. Brittany started shaking him and asked what was wrong. Blair replied that everything was fine, until she almost strangled him. She hugged him and said it was good. Do you know how worried I was? Blair apologized to the teacher. Calvin coughed, drawing attention to himself, and told Blair that they would definitely deal with this matter, but they had come for a very important reason. Brittany said that she forgot to introduce them. She pointed to the old man and said, "This is the vice chairman of the Calvin Society, you must know him. Next to him is the vice chairman of the Archie community. He is from the Mathematical Society." Blair greeted them, and Calvin said that he had helped teacher Brittany solve Ralph's riddle, which was very promising. Brittany said he got it mixed up. Blair solved this riddle himself. I only helped him write the article. Calvin said that by solving the Ralph riddle they would be nominated for the Edwin Prize. This is a great honor for the city of Yabo. If you wish, we will do our best to help you receive this award. Think carefully, the Edwin Prize is the most important award in the mathematical community. It would be a huge asset both for you and for the Academy. Brittany thought about it and asked, Blair can't receive it. Calvin sighed and replied, he is still too young. In the Mathematical Society, no one has results like yours. If you say that he solved the riddle, then no one will believe it. Brittany wanted to object, but Blair called out to her and took her hand approvingly. Brittany looked at him and Calvin said that she could discuss it with Blair again. When they decide, let them tell him. The society will respect their decision in any case. Brittany agreed. After that, they left, and she and Blair returned to the academy. They walked down the corridor together and Brittany told Blair, although the solution to the Ralph riddle didn't seem unusual, it was a great breakthrough in the history of mathematics. It belongs to you, so a stranger shouldn't receive the reward in your place. Blair remained silent, and then said, you don't know, but this award shouldn't be mine at all. He turned around and said with a smile, besides, you're not a stranger at all. Brittany was surprised and asked, what did you say? He wanted to answer something, but Brittany said that it was too late. She told him to return soon, as she still had things to do, so she would leave. Blair remained silent, and thought, did I say something wrong again? He walked further through the corridors and saw a crowd gathered around the notice board. They were looking at an article and wondering if there was some new news. Who is Blair? Does he also write articles? One of the students asked. Another student said that Blair again published an article with the teacher. Seems to be about some kind of mystery. Her friend replied, it's Ralph's riddle. I heard that many scientists couldn't solve it for centuries. Is Blair really that smart? Surely the teacher helped him. Blair walked past them, covering his face. One of the students commented, this Blair must have found a way to suck up to the teacher. Blair thought he hadn't expected teacher Brittany to publish the article under both their names. He sighed tiredly, then suddenly heard someone calling someone an idiot. He noticed Calvin around the corner and a man shouting asking if someone had fought again at the academy. The man was Bud's father. He scolded his son and asked, did I send you to the academy to start fights here? Do you like fighting? He raised a stick and shouted, then today, I'll beat it out of you. He hit his son with the stick and told Dean Calvin that he would definitely teach him a lesson. Just don't expel him. Calvin apologized and said that Bud's behavior was unacceptable. This is a serious violation of school rules. We will have to expel him. Upon hearing this, Bud's father fell to his knees and pleaded with Calvin not to do it. The dean asked what he was doing. Bud's father started begging, and Bud told him to stop. Blair approached them and called out to Dean Calvin. The dean greeted him, and Blair asked what had happened to Bud. Bud gritted his teeth when he saw him. Dean Calvin replied that Bud had violated the academy's rules and that they had already decided to expel him. Don't worry, we will definitely take action. Suddenly, Bud's father pulled Blair's sleeve and asked, are you Blair? he begged him to forgive Bud. I will definitely teach him a lesson. It wasn't easy for us to get him into this academy. If he's expelled, his whole life will go downhill. Blair looked at Bud's father with pity, then sighed heavily. He told the dean that although he and Bud had problems, he asked him not to punish Bud too harshly. Bud was surprised and silence fell between them. The dean said that since Blair was asking on Bud's behalf, the academy could temporarily postpone the decision. He then looked at Bud and said, "If you do something like this again, the academy won't give you a second chance." Bud's father made his son bow and told him to quickly thank Blair and Dean Calvin. Bud thanked the dean and Blair, then bowed his head in apology. Dean Calvin said, "That's good. Now go to class." Bud and Blair went to class together. On the way, Bud asked, "Why did you do that?" Blair stopped at the auditorium door. After a short pause, he replied, "I didn't want to let your father down." Bud thought for a moment, and then thanked Blair again. Blair opened the door to the auditorium, but Bud spoke again, causing Blair to stop. Bud looked into the audience and told Blair, "Be careful with Phage. He won't just let you go." His uncle is the deputy director of the academy. After class, Blair went to the library and thought that today had been such a difficult day, and he still had to go to his part-time job. At the top of the stairs to the library, he met the administrator and called out to him. The administrator asked if he had accidentally offended someone. Blair asked what had happened. The administrator sighed and said that from today he could no longer work in the library, and he also couldn't live in the room. This is an order from the deputy director. After that, Blair went to Brittany's office. She said that today she wanted to take him and Acela to a seminar at the Mathematical Society. "Do you have anything to do tomorrow?" He smiled awkwardly and apologized, saying he had been kicked out of the library, so he needed to find a new place to live. She said he should have told her right away. She had a spare room at home. Blair remained silent. She added that no one lived there, so he could move in with her. Blair asked, "Will we live together? Will this really be convenient?" Brittany asked, "What's uncomfortable about it? If we live together, we can study mathematics anytime. If you have questions, you can ask, right?" Blair replied, "That sounds good." Brittany smiled and said that after the ball he could move in. Blair remained silent. Then Acela burst into the office and asked the teacher why Blair was there. Brittany replied that Blair was also going with them to the seminar. Besides, he had just lost his job at the library, and from today he would be living with her. Acela exclaimed, "How can you live with this pervert?" Brittany replied that she had already told her many times Blair was not like that at all. Acela replied that she was worried about her. "This pervert is so cunning." Blair got upset and asked, "Why do they keep calling me that?" Brittany dragged Acela to the exit and told her not to worry. "Let's go get changed. We need to go to the seminar. Quickly, otherwise we'll be late," Brittany said. She looked at Blair and asked if he had any suitable clothes for the day. Today would be his first time participating in a scientific seminar, so it would be better for him to wear something more formal. Blair asked, "Is it official? Is a magic robe suitable?" Brittany replied that if he had one it would do. In the evening they went to the scientific seminar where many guests had gathered. The teacher and her students were all dressed smartly. Blair looked at Isabella in her dress, and she said that they had arrived. Brittany explained that this was the Howard family's estate and also the venue for the Mathematical Society's seminars. The Mathematical Society is a prominent organization in the Kingdom of Dionan, so they chose the Howard estate. Every seminar of the Mathematical Society is held there. Blair looked at the huge house and asked, "Is Howard a man from the Phage family?" Archie stood at the entrance to the estate discussing different solutions with his friends. Brittany walked up to them and called out to Archie. He turned around and told Brittany and Blair that they had already arrived. Blair greeted him, and Isabella, displeased, folded her arms across her chest and thought, when did he meet the deputy chairman of the Mathematical Society? Archie told Brittany that he and his friends had just been talking about her. If she wanted, he could introduce her to them. Brittany told Acela and Blair to go ahead. She would find them later. Blair and Acela went inside the estate, and Blair, looking at the table, thought, there are so many delicious things here. Rich people live completely differently. He tried the food and thought it was very tasty. He had never eaten anything like it. Acela grabbed his hand and asked, "Are you a pig?" Did Brittany's teacher bring you here just so you could fill your belly? You're only embarrassing us. Blair noticed something on the wall and asked what it was. He saw a drawing of bridges. Acela said that it was the pride of the Howard family, the 7 bridges of the royal capital. Blair asked again, the 7 bridges of the royal capital. Someone nearby asked, does he even know about this? Did he come to participate in the seminar? Phage stood nearby, leaning against the wall. He asked Blair, did you come to my house just to eat? I'll need to speak to my servants about hygiene. Clearly they'll let anyone in. Acela said that Blair came with them and asked how he could speak like that. Phage asked, did I say something wrong? He doesn't even know about the 7 bridges of the royal capital, but he ate more than anyone else. Isabella began to lead Blair away and told him to ignore Phage. They had to go. Phage got angry when he saw her holding Blair's hand and asked, what's wrong, Blair? Still hiding under her skirt? Blair turned around and said, 7 bridges of the royal capital? That sounds interesting. Maybe you could tell me about it? Isabella called out to Blair, but he said that he just wanted to hear about the 7 bridges. Maybe I can come up with a new method. Phage asked, a new method? Brittany's teacher simply felt sorry for you and added your name to the article. Do you really consider yourself a gifted mathematician? Isabella exclaimed. What do you know about it? It was Blair who came up with the solution to the ruse riddle, so his name was included. Phage replied, even if that's true, I'll see if he has any more new ideas. He turned to the other guests and said, look, Mr. Blair says he can solve the riddle of the 7 bridges of the royal capital. Isela looked at Phage irritably. One of the guests said, that's the young man who solved the ruse riddle with Brittany's teacher. Another guest said, the milk on his lips hasn't even dried. How can he solve this? Someone else added, Brittany took pity on him and included his name in the article. Now he thinks he can solve the 7 bridges of the royal capital. Brittany heard this, and Phage mockingly called Blair a math genius. Don't disappoint us, he said. Blair replied, I didn't say I was going to solve it. Suddenly Brittany grabbed Blair's hand. He asked, what is it? She whispered. Why are you getting into a quarrel with Phage? You don't know how powerful the Howard family is. If you anger them, you'll have problems not only with the mathematical society but also with the academy. Besides, mathematicians have struggled with the 7 bridges riddle for centuries. Don't disappoint us, he said. Blair replied, I didn't say I was going to solve it. Suddenly Brittany grabbed Blair's hand. He asked, what is it? She whispered. Why are you getting into a quarrel with Phage? You don't know how powerful the Howard family is. If you anger them, you'll have problems not only with the mathematical society but also with the academy. Besides, mathematicians have struggled with the 7 bridges riddle for centuries. Phage wants you to try it only to embarrass you in front of everyone. Phage called out to Brittany's teacher and asked, didn't you say Blair was a math genius? Why don't you believe in him now? Brittany told him not to twist her words, but Blair interrupted her and said, it's no big deal. I'll try it out of gratitude for the head man helping me leave my library position. Brittany and Acela were surprised. The teacher asked, do you really want to take this on? Blair turned to Phage and said, since you insist, I'll solve the 7 bridges of the royal capital. Phage replied, I didn't think you were that stupid. Let's see what you can do. The 7 bridges of the royal capital is a riddle that was invented by the first generation of the Howard family lived several hundred years ago. Since then, no one has been able to solve the riddle, except for that first generation. Several hundred years ago, the head man of their family was a high-ranking person. He noticed that the capital had a special terrain. At that time, the city was not yet very large. It was divided into 2 islands located in the middle of the river. To make it possible to move between the islands, 7 bridges were built. The islands were then connected to each other and to the banks of the river. These bridges helped the residents of the capital establish mutually beneficial relationships. One day, the elder was looking at the 7 bridges, and a thought occurred to him. Is it possible to use these bridges to travel to any place and return to the starting point by crossing each bridge only once? When the elder put forward this idea, mathematicians across the kingdom began to ponder the question. Many famous scientists came to the capital to find a solution. A lot of time passed. Scientists proposed many theories, but no one could figure out how to return without crossing at least one bridge again. Until, one day, the elder himself claimed to have found a solution. He announced it to all the mathematicians in the kingdom, and the next day, everyone gathered to witness the correctness of his method. Almost all the mathematicians of the kingdom assembled on the bridges. However, they waited until evening, but the elder never appeared. A few days later, his body was discovered. Most likely, he was so excited about his discovery that he accidentally tripped and drowned in the river. The death of the elder was a huge loss for the mathematical society of the kingdom. The 7 bridges of the royal capital were left without a known solution. Even the Howard family still does not know how to solve the problem. Several hundred years have passed. A huge number of mathematicians have tried to find the answer, but none have succeeded. Although the solution was lost, the Howard family preserved the memory of the first-generation elder, and the fact that he was the only one who supposedly found the solution. They hung this engraving in the living room. It is a symbol of pride for the entire mathematical community. Blair thought about what it meant. As he reflected, he realized the 7 bridges of the royal capital are the same as the 7 bridges of Königsberg. Blair replied that he would not be able to find a solution, but then no one else would be able to either. Farge chuckled, then laughed even harder. Is that your answer? Weren't you so sure of yourself? Some genius. The other guests who had been waiting for a solution to the riddle began to murmur. One girl said that he was just an arrogant child. Her friend, however, said that he didn't seem so simple to her. Farge wiped away tears from laughing, while Blair calmly said that he wouldn't find a solution because the riddle of the 7 bridges cannot be solved. Isabella and Brittany asked at the same time, "Can this not be resolved?" Farge scoffed, "What nonsense is this? He can't solve it, so now he says it's impossible? Then how did the first-generation elder of the Howard family come up with a solution?" Blair replied, "Then let me ask, is there any proof that he actually found a solution?" Farge grew angry. "What are you trying to say? Are you doubting him? Do you even know the position the elder held in the kingdom?" Suddenly, the Viscount told them to stop. He turned to his son and said that he had told him many times not to boast about the glory of their ancestors. Farge was frightened and asked his father for forgiveness. The Viscount approached Blair and asked, "Are you Blair? Calvin spoke of you." Blair bowed and replied, "It is a great honor." The Viscount said he had seen the argument with his son and acknowledged that his son was in the wrong. He apologized on his behalf. However, he also added, saying that the 7 bridges of the royal capital have no solution dishonors the memory of our ancestors. I hope you take back your words. Blair replied respectfully, "I do not mean to offend, but the 7 bridges of the royal capital truly have no solution." Isabella looked at Blair and thought that this was the first time she had seen him so confident. The Viscount began to grow angry. "Do you want to prove it?" Blair nodded. "I can prove it to everyone. I'll explain why the riddle of the royal capital has no solution." He began to draw something on paper. Faced with such a difficult problem, many wise men of the past sought a practical solution. That effort is worthy of respect. But if we examine the problem mathematically, the answer will be hard to find because there are too many possibilities far beyond human capacity. He finished his drawing and showed it to the guests. In fact, he said, "We can represent a complex practical problem on paper as a simple numerical one. Let each piece of land be a point. We'll represent the bridge connecting 2 sections as a line. This is the map we get." Then he added, "If we can leave from each point and walk across each bridge only once without repeating a pattern, then it will mean that the riddle has a solution." But, here the explanation would likely continue into the well-known graph theory problem that inspired Euler's solution. Can return to the original place without going over the 7 bridges again. A guest exclaimed, "Was it possible?" A girl, surprised, said, "That's amazing." Another girl turned to her friend and asked, "So it was possible to do this?" He simplified a practical problem into a drawing. "That's just an amazing idea." She wasn't wrong. "This Blair is really smart," she added. Her friend just smiled. Blair said, "It's obvious. Other than the initial and end point, when someone passes through a bridge onto a piece of land, they leave through another bridge. Now we will call points connected by an odd number of segments singularity points, and points connected by an even number of segments paired points." Brittany said, "I get it. If they want to start from a point and eventually return to it, they need to reach all the points and also leave them. So the solution only exists if all the points are paired." Blair nodded. "Well said. That's the key point." One of the guests asked, Then the 4 points of the 7 bridges of the royal capital. Blair didn't let him finish. He confirmed, exactly. Everyone can now see that these 4 points near the 7 bridges of the royal capital are singular. Therefore, no matter what method they choose, they will never be able to return to their original point without crossing a bridge more than once. Therefore, the 7 bridges of the royal capital have no solution. All the guests froze in shock. After a moment, a man said, "This theory has no flaws," which means this problem truly has no solution. Fudge exclaimed, "What nonsense is he talking about?" The guests began murmuring among themselves in surprise. "So the Howard family has been deceiving us all these years. How is this possible? There's no solution to the problem. They've been lying for so long," Fage shouted. "Don't listen to this fool's nonsense." But the guests remained silent. A girl said, "I'm afraid that only their ancestor, the elder, was talking nonsense. He deceived the entire kingdom for so many years." Phage called out to his father, but he didn't respond. Then Phage turned around and was immediately slapped in the face. He fell to the floor from the blow. His father stood over him and said, "It's that lousy mouth of yours. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been embarrassed like this." The Viscount turned to Blair and said, "I remember this. Just wait." But Blair stopped him. "Please wait." The Viscount turned back. Blair said, "According to the rules of the Mathematical Society, I helped with Phage's question. Now he must help with mine. Is that correct?" The Viscount looked at his son, then replied, "Very well. According to the Society's rules, let him ask his question." Blair said, "My question is very simple. If the sides of a square are equal to 1, what is the diagonal?" The Viscount was surprised. Brittany asked, "Blair, don't you know that the Howard family put forward the Howard theorem?" The Viscount replied, "According to Howard's theorem, if the sides of a square are 1 unit each, then the square of the length of the diagonal is equal to 2. That is true." Blair shook his head and said, "You didn't answer my question. I didn't ask for the square of the diagonal. I asked for the diagonal itself." The Viscount clenched his teeth in anger. One of the guests said, "I never really thought about the diagonal itself." Another guest added, "He could probably show us that too." The Viscount fell silent. Blair thought, "Everything is as I expected." He had known about this number from the beginning. In his world, although scientists were respected, no one really knew them. People preferred gossip about celebrities over learning about the minds who contributed to the progress of mankind. But in this world, even though science is at a low level, scientists are highly revered. People respect knowledge more than magic. Scientists who have made major contributions to their fields enjoy not only international fame but also the respect of the royal family and aristocracy. That's why scientists have come together to take control of the economy and politics, forming a powerful force. The Mathematical Society is one such force. The Howard family holds an important position in the mathematical community. As such, the community's influence is significant. Even the head of Yabo City, Isabella's father, must show respect to the Howard family. The Mathematical Society includes scientists, politicians, and religious scholars. They believe that everything on Earth can be represented in the form of numbers. In fact, their ideas are similar to those of the Pythagorean school. The school of Pythagoras was